Welcome back to the Stretch the Floor podcast. I'm Matthew here, as always, with Venushan, and we're gonna start this podcast off with some pretty bad news because the Cavs were kind of everyone's favorite up and coming out of nowhere team this year, and Ricky Rubio was. I mean, at first Colin Sexton was a big part of that, and then Ricky Rubio was a, you can argue, even bigger part of that. And news came out just yesterday that he suffered a season-ending ACL tear, and it's reported that the Cavs are already looking at Rajon Rondo to replace him, and they're actually in pretty advanced trade talk. So, initial thoughts, just like Rubio's injury sucks, and what do you think
Yeah,
of where the Cavs go from here in this Rondo trade?
yeah. So they lost two out of the three kind of like primary ball handlers, Colin Sexton being done for the season, and now Ricky Rubio being done for the season. Both those guys also on contract years, which also sucks for them. Obviously, Sexton's gonna get his money because he's young. He'll bounce back. He'll perform good. But Rubio getting that ACL tear on the same knee and the same ACL, which teared back in the day at the age of 31, he probably lost almost close to like 30 million dollars because of that injury. So it sucks to see someone lose so much money when they're playing so well and when they're like doing so like such a good like league guy. Like it's like only positive things from his teammates and everything. You never want to see that happen to any player, but man, it really sucks to see that happen to Ricky Rubio. It always seems like when he's always on the up and coming, having his best career year, it always has that injury. Exact same thing happened when the Timberwolves back in the day when he was when he was young and they were making that push for the uh back for the playoffs with Kevin Love. But this time they were both the starters and the stars. Now they're all both on the bench and doing it as a six-man unit. But yeah, both of them, yeah, it just sucks to see. Hopefully he's able to recover fully and hopefully he's able to get some sort of bag and some sort of decent amount of money. But it really just sucks to see. And for the Cavs, they're gonna fall massively because this isn't like a Ricky Rubio that people see as a role player or something like that. He's a huge part of this team's vocal on defense, like playmaking, shooting, even like he just does it all for this team. And he was like borderline like all-star level production that was coming out of him. So losing him on top of the loss of Sexton is going to be a huge blow for this team. That could see him sliding from fifth to like ninth.
Yeah, I agree, and it just like Rubio, I feel so bad for him because he
Yeah,
seems to get traded every year. He seems to like have a good enough year that like everyone can, like you said, considers him like a good role player, but like he's just good enough to get traded, and he just gets traded every year. And now when he actually has like a career year, when he can
yeah,
actually get himself back and go where he wants to go,
yeah.
he he gets this injury. So that sucks. And the Cavs, I mean, their luck's been pretty bad this year, and uh, yeah, I mean, I agree that they should drop, but they didn't really drop after they lost Sexton. So we'll see what happens. But
Yeah,
Rubio was kind of one of the big guys on this team, and we mentioned that Rajon Rondo has come up in trade talks. I mean, yeah, fine. Like I don't know how you feel about that, but I mean, go
yeah,
get him if you want, sure. But I don't really see that affecting it too much.
yeah. They're gonna use disabled player exception on Ricky Rubio, which is gonna give him enough cap space to kind of just absorb Rondo and waive someone else. And they're gonna essentially get Rondo for a second round pick or two second round picks. So they're gonna get him at a very low cost, and he's gonna be the backup point guard. He's not gonna, be a huge impact like Ricky Rubio was. They're gonna expect more from Okoro, his defense, and they're gonna expect better shooting from him. So that improvement from him is gonna have to come. And at the end of the day, even if you do slide into a play-in position, if I told Cavs fans
Yeah,
you lose Sexton and you lose Rubio and you're still in a playoff position with Jared Allen or Darius Garland being an all-star, because one of them's gonna make it, they'll be like, yo, that's a pretty good season. So it's just manage expectations because yeah, the way this team's playing, like you wanted them to see a win a playoff series, right?
hmm
Like you wanted them to battle with that 4 or 5 seed and win and go to the second round and lose. That's kind of the expectations they're building. But now you're gonna be very happy with like a Mobley potentially winning or coming second in rookie of the year to our guy Barnes. Uh, an all-star, first time all-star in Jared Allen, like Garland, and making the playoffs or play in, they're going to be very happy with that still. And it's just going to be huge development to, get those guys back. But what this Rondo trade does signify is that they're kind of out of the Ben Simmons
yeah,
saga. Because if they're going for Rondo, I don't see them also going for Ben Simmons. So seems like there's one less Ben Simmons suitor this season
It seems like it. Like the Cavs were one of my favorite,
to
kind
land
of
him.
low key Ben Simmons destinations. But yeah, if they're going for Rondo, they're probably out of it because Rondo is kind of just a shorter Ben Simmons kind of at this
Yeah,
point. But and you mentioned, I mean, they lost Sexton, they lost Rubio, and yet they still have some guys on that team, right? They still
yeah,
got Garland, they still got all their
Okoro,
Coral,
and
all their
then
bigs, Allen,
yeah,
Mobley, Kevin Love, all those guys. So while they're probably dropped to a play-in spot, like you said, I think even coming into the year, if you told them they would finish as like an 8 or 9 seed, they wouldn't be too unhappy with that. So
yeah,
Cavs have come a long way from where they were just a couple of years ago. Let's segue into talking about the Lakers, who are in that Rondo trade.
yeah,
They are kind of a mess right now. They're 4-6 in their last 10. They're not really playing great basketball. And the season, I mean, obviously every team has been hit by COVID, but the season is pretty old now. We're over a third of the way through the season. We're approaching the halfway mark of the season, and they haven't really clicked quite
yeah.
yet, like we thought they would come mid-season time. So, A, are you concerned about the Lakers? And B, if you are, what do you do to fix them?
Yeah, they're gonna have to make these trades to get second round picks and stuff to then asset like with someone else to get expiring deals and expiring guys for around the deadline. So one, they're gonna free up a contract, a roster spot where Rondo probably going, getting a second round pick, and they're probably gonna re-sign Stanley Johnson to a longer term deal. Because what they need with Stanley Johnson or a guy like Stanley Johnson is they just need people on that team who care and who are going to die for the loose ball, who are going to go all out on defense. They're going to need those guys because those guys just aren't on the Lakers right now. They're just a bunch of veterans who play when they want to play, get their numbers when they want to get their numbers. And you have LeBron James averaging like 30, 10, and 10, and them still losing. Obviously, Anthony Davis being hurt is a massive blow. Something that definitely is being underestimated by like the mainstream media. Like you just see them not talking about it that much. That when you lose a top 10, a top 15 level guy in the league, you kind of suffer, and that's evident. But it also shows that DeAndre Jordan is not an NBA player anymore. Dwight Howard can only play 10 minutes as a backup big. Like they started starting those guys at the beginning of the season. I think they proved that's not possible. It shows Westbrook has never made winning plays in his life and doesn't understand what winning plays is or are needed because he came out and said people are expecting them to get 25, 15, and 15. No, people are expecting you not to dribble the ball off your foot, not to shoot contested threes, not to shoot pull-up threes, run to the rim more, try on defense, not let Patty Mills get a wide open three on Christmas when he's already made 6 of them. Like he just has horrible basketball IQ and horrible winning plays. And he better hope that he doesn't get traded because if he gets traded and he never wins a ring or whatever, it's going to be a huge stain on Westbrook's legacy. And Westbrook is the centerfold of this Lakers problem.
Yeah, I mean, from day one when that trade happened, none of us liked it, but
Yeah,
I think both of us held out hope because Westbrook at his last 2 stops started off slow and turned it
played
on
good.
and really fit in the second half of the season. And hey, that might happen, but this is worse than it has been the
Yeah,
last couple of years. You're right, like their struggles, that's not all on him, but
yeah,
if they had made one of those other moves, like we always bring up DeMar DeRozan, we always bring up some of those other guys
Buddy
they could have
Hield.
gotten in the offseason, Buddy Hield. I think this team would be gelling a lot better, but there is still room to tinker with the roster, obviously. And if they
Yeah,
do get rid of Rondo, bring in some of these guys. I mean,
Stanley Johnson. Yeah,
we've seen a lot of questionable players playing in the NBA recently, but there's still some guys that the Lakers could bring in to sort of patch things together. And I mean, hey, bright spot, LeBron's playing unbelievable. He doesn't look like
yeah,
he's slowed down at all. So
yeah. Bright spot. LeBron's probably gonna get the all-time second. He's gonna probably pass Karl Malone sometime this year. Anthony Davis is gonna return and is gonna make you a hard out against anyone
yeah,
in the league because Anthony Davis and LeBron James, even if you sit Russell Westbrook
yeah,
and play Malik Monk and Kendrick Nunn as your backcourt,
yeah.
or Avery Bradley. Avery Bradley's kind of been a bright spot for them too. Solid defense. So once you add, all those guys in and, just Avery Bradley, Carmelo Anthony, Kendrick Nunn, Malik Monk, Stanley Johnson, who they're probably going to sign for full time, throw those players in with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. that's a tough team to beat, man, at the end of the day. So yeah, it's gonna be a tough team to beat no matter in the playoffs because it's LeBron James at the end of the day. But Westbrook is definitely a negative because he just can't shoot, and the lack of shooting is definitely hurting this team. So I can't even throw like a trade destination. I was trying to think of one. I really can't think of one. Like John Wall is one, but do the Rockets want to deal with this Westbrook stuff? John Wall, yeah, he had that little splurt on social media where he's like free John Wall and whatever.
Yeah.
But he's not really negatively impacting the locker room. Like what will Westbrook do, right? It's like if you already have a bad situation contained, there has to be a
Yeah.
big
Don't bring it
benefit.
in.
Yeah. So unless they get those picks, which they don't really have,
Hey,
but another player that does have trade value that's actually tradable on this team, Horton Tucker, sitting around 9 million. So look for a player around 9 million that could shoot to go to the Lakers. But other than that, man, it's a really hard job to fix because Westbrook's hard to move.
yeah. And you mentioned sitting him might just be a strategy. Literally, just don't play him
Yeah.
because he doesn't fit with the rest of the team. Now, how about just like taking that a step back and playing him as a six man, not even playing him at the same time as LeBron and AD, and just playing him for like 15, 20 minutes a game, just letting
Yeah.
him do his thing, putting some shooters around him, and then you can kind of mitigate the chemistry issues like that.
No, that would be the ideal situation. But the thing is Westbrook that selfless? Like, is he actually gonna go back and be like, yeah, I'll take this minute reduction, all that stuff? I don't know. I can't see that happening.
It's even for him, that might be the more self profiting decision, because if he
Yeah,
wins a ring, like you said, his legacy looks completely different than it does if he
better.
doesn't. But it's hard to look that far ahead when you're in his position, obviously.
Yeah,
Okay, before we move on to our next topic, I just wanted to kind of shout out a couple of players who have almost every star has been in and out of COVID protocols over the last month, and a lot of them are starting to finally come out, and some of them have been playing amazing. Like for example, DeMar DeRozan was one of the first stars to go into the protocols, and he missed
yeah,
about pretty much exactly 2 weeks. He comes back and literally doesn't miss a beat. His last 6 games, he's averaging 28 points, 4 and 6, something like that. Still has the Bulls
crazy.
in a 2 seed, and I mean, he left. He was in the fringe MVP conversation when he left, and he's still there when he came back.
Yeah, and him and Zach LaVine both came back, both making this team look amazing. Lonzo Ball is expected to return soon, but Kobe White has definitely been playing amazing, upping his trade value if a trade is supposed to happen there. But this team has been playing so well, I can't see a trade happening anymore. Because why mess with the
Hmm.
chemistry issues, right? You can
Yeah.
move Kobe White down. You get Javante Green's playing amazing. Vucevic is finally getting into his stride, grabbing crazy amount of boards. This team's playing well, man, and they're definitely gonna be one of those teams that's gonna be. It's like a new team that's a contender. Like all these other teams we seen
Yeah.
last year are
Yeah.
contenders, right? Like yeah, Bucks are still contenders. Yeah, Nets are still contenders. Yeah, LeBron, even though he's like the 7th seed right now, LeBron's a contender. The Suns made the finals. The Jazz lost in the conference finals. The Warriors have won like 3 out of the last 5 championships, right? So like it's all like old contenders, and it's just fun to see a new team performing and potentially being up there with everyone else.
And a real contender with the way they've played to this point in the
Yeah,
season. They're not like, oh, they might be a contender. Like I would consider them have a real shot of at least going to the conference finals. And when you're in the conference finals, anything can happen, especially in
yeah,
a year like this. Any other players that, I mean, Pascal Siakam 1 game back had a really good
yeah,
game for our Raptors, and our
yeah.
Raptors were hit maybe the hardest out of anyone. But
The
who
whole
else?
starters are back now, so
Yeah.
expect them to get on a little bit of win streak. Another player that came back and started playing decently. Another player that played well in the absence of the Raptors starters, Chris Boucher,
Yeah.
had a 20-10 game and then a 28-19 game against Joel Embiid. He's definitely upping his trade value. So
Yeah.
if the
Yeah.
Lakers want to
That
throw us
trade
Talon
value.
Horton Tucker for Chris Boucher, we'll take that. You can get a shooting big. That's what they always look for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd consider that for sure. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next topic. So, another player who is just generally breaking out this year is DeJounte Murray. Now, his Spurs, I mean, they're kind of right around where we predicted them, maybe a little higher. I think maybe we predicted them a little bit lower in the standings. So his Spurs are a little higher, but he's having an unbelievable season. Averaging a tick under a triple double.
Yeah.
And he's shooting 3, the best he ever has had in his career. and he's been the shining bright spot of the Spurs this season. So, what are your thoughts on him, and what are your thoughts on how the Spurs build around him going forward?
Yeah, so we had the Spurs like right around this 14-19 right now, but the rest of the league, like they had as the Spurs plus minus wins were 26, so they're completely smashing the league expectations. They're in play-in right now at the 10th spot. DeJounte Murray, he's averaging 17.8 points, 8.4 rebounds, 8.8 assists, 2 points, 2 steals, 0.4 blocks, 2.3 turnovers only, and 1.4 threes a game. He's playing incredible. He's having essentially like an amazing season all around from defensive standpoint, the rebounding standpoint, the playmaking standpoint. He's been great. And he's one of the reasons why they're competitive and in a play-in. I would say he's the main reason why that's happening.
Yeah.
And with Jakob Poeltl's improvement too, as a lob threat, as the defensive rim protector, and then Popovich always getting the best out of players. You know, Keldon Johnson's shot the ball horrible to start, and now he's like the best 3-point percent shooter in the league, right? So the Spurs are just showing nice internal growth, and DeJounte Murray's leadership, his ability to drive to the rim, his ability to do a little bit of everything, is one of the reasons why the rest of the Spurs are also performing to such a high level.
Yeah, and I mean DeJounte Murray he's kind of turned himself into like any team in the league would like kill to have a point guard like him. Like he is literally the best of everything. Before it was like he played amazing defense. He didn't really score too much. He didn't shoot at all. And now he's shooting like 34, 35% and still with that defense. Now he has that leadership and he's actually showing some winning. He's probably not going to make the All-Star team just because his team, I mean, he'll be on the fringe of the All-Star conversation, but
he'll be
like
one of the biggest snubs.
He'll be one of the biggest snubs.
Yeah. And another thing with DeJounte Murray is good to notice is he brings the best out of players. Like he's an actual like point guard, like Chris Paul as. Like you could see like in the fourth quarters and stuff, everything gets run through and he sets up the plays. He's like the point guard of the Spurs. And that's just good to see because when you see like it's just a true point guard, which is a throwback. And in the offseason, there's a lot of talks about him getting traded for Ben Simmons. But I think literally like what not even halfway through the season, like he's up his trade value to a certain point where that's just the Spurs don't do that anymore.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. I was going to bring up Ben Simmons and like even player wise, like on court wise, he kind of does everything Ben Simmons does because he has the defense. I mean, he's not as big as him, but he's actually he's willing to shoot like because they both kind of started out in the same position, but now he's actually willing to shoot. Like if Ben Simmons did that, he'd be maybe in a different spot, but that's a different conversation. Let's move on to talk about our Nuggets because they've had a hard time of it too, obviously this year with injuries, but we never doubted them. We knew they weren't going to drop in the standings. We thought maybe they would fall into the play-in, but they're still in a 5 seed. And with no one around him, Nikola Jokic is putting up the exact same numbers, the exact same efficiency as he was in his MVP season, showing no signs of slowing down. And you could argue that, like, you could make a legitimate argument that he's MVP right now, just with the level of talent around him, where his team is and his numbers. It's insane.
Jokic literally had a game-winning block against the Warriors, and it was on like 0 social medias. Like House of Highlights didn't post it, like Sports Center didn't post it, no one posted it, and he's the reigning MVP, and he did it against the MVP favorite this year. Like, what? Like, this is Nikola Jokic is probably the most like disrespected by like main media, but at the end of the day, he's the reigning MVP for a reason. He's still a 5th seed, competing, trying to get a top 4 seed and playoff the first round home court advantage with no Jamal Murray and no Michael Porter Jr., 2 max players. It's crazy, man. He's honestly having one of the best seasons of all time. Like, this is a season that people are going to talk back and like, oh man, remember Curry's 2015, 2016 season, remember Bron's 2012, 2013 season, stuff like that. Mike, whatever, like it's one of those. It's just up there because there's always these crazy stats. Like for part of the season, he was leading them in everything, like literally every single stat. And now he has the biggest on-court plus minus ever, where like the Nuggets are a historically great team when he's playing, and they're historically a horrible team when he's off the court. Like he just has these like insane stats, insane advanced stats, and his team is winning. Like Westbrook won as a 6 seed MVP. He's a fifth seed. So MVP is definitely up there for Jokic. And man, if he's able to sneak in to that 4th seed, I honestly think he should get it over Steph.
Yeah, those on and off stats are wild. Like if there
Yeah.
ever were a definition of MVP, like that's it. Like it's
Yeah.
insane. It's going to be hard. Steph's record is just so like
Yeah. That
sparkling, that
storyline.
Warriors record. But I mean,
Yeah.
we're halfway through the season, and Steph, Jokic, and KD are the top 3 candidates in my opinion in some particular
Yeah.
order. And you could make a legitimate argument for any of the 3. It's completely insane.
Yeah. It's just going to come down to storyline. And then NBA, is looking up like their golden boy, Steph Curry. And
Yeah.
obviously fans too. Steph Curry is probably going to be the most voted player for All-Star this year. So it's going to be hard to beat Steph Curry when he has a storyline going for him too, and it's close. You have to really separate from him. Like Jokic did last year, where he just put a huge gap where the storyline couldn't make up for it. But yeah, this year's probably going to go to Steph just because that storyline push is going to be too heavy. But Jokic, KD, Steph wins. I don't think anyone could be mad.
Yeah, exactly. It just feels like 5-10 games into the season, like people decided that it was Steph Curry's award to lose.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to do something pretty big to change people's minds about that, right? Like he just has to kind of maintain that and not, he doesn't have to prove it, right? He has to kind of disprove it. So it's going to be hard for Jokic and KD to do it, but we'll see. We'll see. Before we end it off, I wanted to bring up something kind of interesting. So obviously with all these hundreds of players going to dozens and dozens of players going to COVID protocols, we've seen a crazy number of players be playing in the NBA this year. In fact, it's a record number at 541 players have played in the NBA this year, which is completely insane. And the quality of basketball obviously has suffered a bit, but not what you would think. So that makes me think, and this is something we've talked about before, that the NBA could definitely stand up to an expansion. Maybe you have more than even just one team, maybe 2 teams. Maybe like I'm sure they could probably even handle 4 teams. That's too much, but I can see 2 teams happening and the quality not suffering too much.
Yeah, this is the reason why expansion is perfect right now. Owners lost a lot of money. That's just true. The bubble, the home games, all that stuff. Owners lost a lot of money. So selling 2 expansion teams, they're gonna go for around 1.5 billion each. So 1.5 billion, 1.5 billion. Let's say that the NBA takes like a 40% cut or whatever. That's still around 1.5 to $2 billion split between 30 people. So that's going to be good for the owners. I'm pretty sure they're going to enjoy that money and they're going to want that money. So now the owners finally have incentive to bring in 2 more teams. And then the talent pool. We know the talent pool is enough to hoist and roster 32 teams because we've seen players like Brandon Knight, Stanley Johnson, Greg Monroe. None of them had an NBA contract. DJ Wilson for the Toronto Raptors. Mm-hmm. And those 4 players are going to be NBA players. After this 10-day contract ends, DJ Wilson is going to get signed. Greg Monroe has played good enough that he should get signed and he will get signed. Brandon Knight has scored in double digits every single game he's played since the 10-day contract, so he will get signed. And Stanley Johnson has been one of the best hustle and rebounders and effort guys for the Lakers, whereas the Lakers are saying, yo, waive anyone to get him signed. So those are 4 players that off the top of my head are able to re-sign and also provide more opportunity for the starting center of the Miami Heat currently, Omer Yurtseven. He's had 3 triple doubles back to back. He needs to get minutes. So I'm pretty sure in an expansion draft, having him as your starting center, people will be happy with that. Gabe Vincent, Max Stress, those are 2 good shooters on the Miami Heat bench who get no minutes. Who, now that when they got minutes, they both were averaging 5 threes a game and almost 15 points, right? So all these guys are just showing they're NBA level players and they can compete against any other NBA player. And it's just something exciting to see. And I think it's time because owners have a reason. The talent pool is high enough. It's time. There's no reason not to do an NBA expansion.
There's too many reasons. I mean, we were talking about this before we saw all these non-NBA players playing NBA quality basketball just for the monetary reason. We knew the talent level was the highest it's ever been in the NBA. And now there's you don't need any more proof. It's time. It's time to do it. Another thing the league actually is talking about which is what they've been toying around with for a couple of years, is a mid-season tournament. Now they talk about the play-in tournament. They actually did it. Now the play-in tournament is a real thing. Do you think this mid-season tournament will become a thing within the next 5 years? And if
I
so, do
hope
you
not.
not want it? Because I don't want it.
Yeah, because there's a way for the owners to get their money back that they lost from this whole situations. And that's with bringing in an expansion team. Seattle and Las Vegas are going to bring in a lot of new fans. They're going to grow the sport, going to make everything bigger. So go that route, which every NBA wants to support. We've seen the NHL already do successfully. So there's already a model to follow. Go that route and get the money that way rather than doing this new thing. Because who's gonna care about this? Like, how are you gonna compare a midseason tournament? Let's say Tatum wins 14 midseason tournaments, but wins
Yeah.
0 championships. Is he the GOAT?
Yeah.
Is he gonna be like,
Yeah.
LeBron won 5 championships, Jordan won 6 rings? I
Yeah.
won 14 midseason championships. That's more than them combined. Like, does that make him
Yeah.
the GOAT? Or
Yeah.
like just it just adds such new. It's so new that it has to like. It's so new and it's the same product. You know what I mean? It's not like it's changing. It's not like it's a 3-on-3 tournament where it's like, oh man, Tatum might be the best 3-on-3 player ever, right? It's not like a new sport. It's the same product, except there's no reason for us to watch. There's a reason for the players to watch. They got money, so they're gonna be down for it. Well, why would I watch it? Like, I'm just gonna wait. It seems like I should just take a break and wait till the NBA comes back. Like, I feel like it's gonna have a negative effect on ratings, and maybe I'll watch the final for it, but I think it's gonna be a really bad thing.
Exactly. That's my thinking. Exactly. That midseason tournament feels like the perfect opportunity for me to just like kind of
Take a break.
take a break. So I don't get basketball burnout. Just take a break. I don't have to watch the NBA for a week and a half, for 2 weeks, whatever. And then I come back and I'm like refreshed and ready to go. And I just can't see the players. I mean, obviously they're going to want to win because I think the rumored prize was $1 million each. So
Each, yeah,
that's that's an
that's a
incentive for
lot of
sure. But
money.
I don't know. I just can't see the media and fans being into it. It's just too obviously a cash grab.
Yeah,
You're going to make so much more money from the expansion, and from the expansion draft itself is going to be a huge televised event. There's going to be hype
yeah.
leading up to it on every show, on every podcast, on every Twitter account for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I think you can make more than enough money from that.
And even like expansion rules. Like, let's say they just say, all right, the number 1 and 2 picks go to the new expansion teams.
Yeah,
People are gonna be like, oh my god, is that fair for Pablo and Chet Holmgren to go to these new Seattle and Vegas? Or like,
yeah,
is that not fair for Detroit Pistons and the Orlando Magic who tanked this season? You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And we're gonna talk about that for like a whole hour,
yeah,
right? Analyze
yeah,
how that's gonna impact Pablo and Chet's career and stuff like that. Then we have to talk about a whole hour predicting who they're gonna draft and if it's enough that only 6 players are allowed to be protected and not 7. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And we got to talk about the whole analyzing the draft. Like, oh, this player went up 3rd or should he went up 5th? You know what I mean? Then it's analyzing, like, is the West versus the East, because the 2 new teams are going to be in the West. Like, who
yeah,
comes to the East? Stuff like,
yeah.
there's going to be so much content and money and like just eyes on the NBA because of this new expansion that it'll be so worth it. And it's so worth it. Like, they have to do it now.
I know, and even if you weren't a fan of like one of the new teams, it's just like the expansion just kind of like brings more eyes onto the league, just kind of like refreshes like everyone's
Yeah,
interest in the league. So it would just that's that is what they should go for, and not this midseason
100%.
tournament. Please no. I was against the playing tournament when they originally brought it in. I'm like kind of
I'm iffy with it now.
I'm like sometimes I feel good about it, sometimes I don't. When our Raptors, if they get a 10 seed and they actually have a chance to make the playoffs, I'll like it then. And if they
If they're
were
the 8 seed.
the 8 seed or the 7 seed and they end up losing, I'm not gonna like it then. So
Yeah.
whatever. But I know I don't like this midseason tournament.
Season.
Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of it. It's been a very, very, very slow period in the NBA. But nonetheless, we'll find something to talk about every week because all the good players are coming back, and we're getting into the right around after Christmas is when the NBA like really, really heats up, and we start moving towards the All-Star break and the trade deadline and everything. So this is the best time of the basketball calendar, except for the playoffs. So really hyped for that. Thank you all for listening to this episode. You can check us out on all of our social media platforms, Instagram at Stretch the Floor Podcast, YouTube, subscribe to SCF Clips for all the best clips from the podcast. But most importantly, subscribe to the podcast feed, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a like, rating, review because it all really helps with the algorithm. And thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next week.